we have an idea of what church it probably was, but we know this poem that was written for it, this song, these words that were written in memory of it. And so he didn't know very many poets, but he knew one in the town, a local one. His name was Placide Cappeau, and he was an irreligious wine merchant who rarely attended church and actually openly identified as an atheist. But he's a poet and works hard to come by, and so he was asked to write this, and he agreed to. Before he did it, he thought, I should reread the Gospel of Luke. And so on a stagecoach ride that was about 6 hours, he read the whole Gospel of Luke and wrote down the words, or somewhat of the words that we sing today. And he finished it just in time for the midnight mass and called it Midnight Christians. A few years later, French composer Adolphe Adam set Cappeau's poem to music, and it exploded in popularity and quickly became a very popular song in France and even in neighboring countries. And it was not just because it was beautiful in France. The tune reminded people of the revolutionary songs in France that had shaped the spirit of the 1800s. And Adam, the composer, intentionally wrote it in that style. He called it a religious revolutionary song, a religious Marseillaise, which is still the national anthem of France today, because Cappeau's lyrics themselves, he saw them as revolutionary. They seemed like the kind of things that would show up in a revolutionary song. This wasn't a quiet lullaby about a sleeping baby. It was a declaration that the birth of Christ was the beginning of a radical new way of being human. A world where the last would be first, a kingdom where even pagan kings from distant countries were traveling to come and see and acknowledge this kingdom. A Messiah who came to lift the humble, to free the oppressed, and to turn the world upside down. Cappeau, when he read those first few chapters, or those chapters in Luke, he most definitely read the songs of Mary and Zechariah and Simeon that you find in those first few chapters. And in chapter 4, he probably would have came upon how Jesus begins his adult ministry, reading from the book of Isaiah. He says, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And it's not hard to imagine how a non-devout, non-church-going, but politically aware poet might have read that and said, this is a revolution. This is something that's flipping everything on its head. But the church didn't see it that way. You can see where maybe the controversy could have come when the church leaders learned that the beloved song was written by an atheist and had a revolutionary tone. And they didn't want that to be sung in their churches. And so they banned it from use for almost nearly a century, off and on. This song was banned from use in churches in France and surrounding countries. It was not allowed to be sung, and a Catholic music journal complained that the song had become too popular, writing, "It is sung in the streets, social gatherings, and at bars with live entertainment. It becomes debased and degenerated. The best would be to let it go its own way, far from the houses of religion, which can do very well without it." This song was loved by the people and sang just in their everyday lives, but the church wanted nothing to do with it. And that raises an uncomfortable question. What does it mean when the songs that resonate most deeply with people, the ones that are sung in streets and bars, are not fit for the church or considered unfit for the church? The song kept spreading. And in 1855, nearly a decade after it had been written, it had come to America. And an American abolitionist and Christian named John Sullivan Dwight discovered Midnight Christians. And when he reached the third verse, he stopped cold. He read, "Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother." This was the decade leading into the Civil War when he read this. Dwight was an outspoken abolitionist, and he loved how directly the song confronted slavery. His English translation is slightly softer than the original French one, but the same themes are there, and his version is the one that we sing today. For Dwight, this was no ordinary carol. It spoke to something deep that he believed in, truth and injustice that he saw in the world and how Christ met that injustice. For him, it was a revolutionary song. It was a protest song. It was a kingdom song, a declaration that the birth of Christ meant the undoing of every chain. And that is the heartbeat of O Holy Night. It is a song that looks at the world as it is, full of oppression and division and pride and pain, and it proclaims that a new kingdom is coming. A kingdom where the proud are brought low, the oppressed are lifted high, and slaves become brothers. That on this one night, light stepped into the world, and all that is sad is becoming untrue. So what does that mean for us? All that history, the fact that it was written by an atheist, didn't come from maybe the most likely or best scenario, best case. What does it mean? Was all of that a correct interpretation of the Gospel of Luke? Or are these men, are they just being led by their own biases and shaping the text to say something that agrees with what they already believe? How often do we do that? And that's something that we need to be careful of when we're interacting with anyone's interpretation of the Bible. That their biases and what they want to be true doesn't come across and be made true by the texts that they pick and choose to form their argument. Lots of people can do that. But here in this case, I don't think they were off. I think that they got it pretty spot on. Let's take a look at the text and find out. And we're going to look at each verse of this song and kind of go through some of the main points that I feel like are definitely drawn from the text and from the Bible and the biblical story. Here in verse 1, this song is written from the point of view of a Christian, a believer, who is witnessing that Christmas evening. And they see it. There's something different about that night. It is a holy night. It is set apart. There's something in the air, right? And every verse has the same structure. It begins with a declaration of a new reality, a way that reality has shifted in some way, how Jesus' arrival or his life has changed things. And then it ends with how we should respond to that new reality. The person singing, as we look at this first verse, that person is seeing something, perceiving something deeper than what is just in front of them. They see the events of the night unfolding, but there's something deeper going on. That through the birth of this one baby, reality has shifted. That what was once thought impossible and hopeless is now possible and full of meaning. Long lay the world in sin and error pining till he appeared, and the soul felt its worth. It's full of meaning. There's hope beyond what was once thought to be the inevitable outcome of every human being. The birth of Jesus brought what was thought to be an endless night into a new and glorious morning. What was thought to be, there's no end in sight, there is now a sun rising. I think that sometimes, living in the world that we live today, and because of the gospel that we have, we forget that we live in a post-endless night version of the world. We forget that if we truly believe in Jesus and the gospel that he shared, that we have to grapple with the reality of a pre-gospel world, when people did not have that hope, when people were slaves to sin and had no hope of ever not being slaves to sin. Yes, there were things that they could do, but a lot of it was an inevitability. A lot of it was just the way things were. And if we are having that in our mind, I mean, what a holy and reality-shifting event it was that God was born as a baby. Think of the thrill of hope that would produce in someone who had only ever experienced endless night. Something you should know about me is I love The Lord of the Rings. It's one of my favorite movies and book series, and it's about that time of year when I'm going to rewatch them all, extended edition, Probably not all in one sitting, but I've done it a few times, and that's about 12 hours if you didn't know. But it is my favorite. I mean, goosebumps all throughout, amazing moments. It's just awesome. And this moment right here, it reminds me of this scene in the second movie where the kingdoms of men have been backed into a corner. And they've been fighting against what seems to be an endless sea of Uruk-hai, which are just like these goblin, orc, evil creatures, endless army. A sea, it looks like in the movie that you can't see the end of them. They're just onslaught coming on. And things don't look good. The walls have been breached, and they're actually all stuck in this tiny room, and the Uruk-hai have a battering ram, and they're taking it to the door, and they're all looking at each other like, this is it. Like, this is the end of the night. It's coming to an end. And so they decide to make one last ride. They get their horses, they saddle up, they put their armor on, and they know they're not gonna outlast the night, but they want to go out fighting. And so they ride out into the sea of just endless enemies. And they're fighting in that moment when all seems lost, when night is at its darkest, the sun rises over the mountains, and the white wizard crests over the hill, and just at the right time, and the reinforcements come down that he's brought with him, and the tide turns. What was thought to be the end, all of a sudden just completely changes for the better, and they didn't see it coming. And that is this moment in the biblical story. The tide has turned. And how should we respond to that? The author wrote to fall on your knees in awe and surrender. The original French says, kneel down and await your deliverance. Here is your Redeemer. Accept it. He's here. Here he is. Deliverance and redemption are rooted in the story of the Exodus at the beginning of the Bible, but they go throughout the entire Bible. You see, God in that Exodus story, he frees Israel from slavery and proves himself to be the one who delivers and redeems. And in Exodus 6, it says, therefore, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with mighty acts of judgment. This theme, like I said, it carries all the way through the biblical story because there is a slavery that all humanity is under. God saves Israel from slavery from the Egyptians, but we are all slaves to sin. We all are under that slavery. We all need redemption. We all need deliverance. And Paul talks about that in Romans. He describes this in his letters to the Romans in chapter 6. He says, but thanks be to God that though you used to be slaves to sin, you have come to obey from your heart the pattern of teaching that has now claimed your allegiance. You have been set free from sin and have become slaves to righteousness. And how do we respond to that redemption, to that deliverance? Rejoice. Fall on your knees, for your Redeemer is here. Verse 2 of the song, it continues to paint this scene of the night. And we imagine looking down into the cradle of the baby, this baby Redeemer, this baby king. And we gather to worship around this cradle in this stable. It's dirty, and it's not necessarily a royal scene, but there are other kings that have traveled here, right? From distant lands, wise men who have come to lay down their gifts to this baby. And we're supposed to lock in on the juxtaposition here, this contrast between these kings and the King of Kings, right? This King of Kings that's laying in a lowly manger. We come to see God in his weakest and most humble of states. A baby in a makeshift crib. He doesn't even have a real crib, right? It's the lowest of lows. Yet he is the King of Kings. And in the face of such humility, these other kings, they're in their nice robes, they have their fancy gifts. And you have to think that they probably felt a little weird, right? If they truly believed, like, this is the one, this is the Messiah, this is the King of Kings, and they're here with their stuff, and he's just in a dirty, rag, in a makeshift crib. Like, and they're bringing all this stuff in the face of such humility. In the face of such humility, it makes everything we cling to for status or security or comfort seem so silly. The things that we think make someone great or royal, They all fall away in the face of something so weak and helpless as a baby in a manger. See, Christ did not enter the world with power, but with weakness. In Hebrews 2:17, it says, "For this reason he, Jesus, had to be made like them, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Because he himself suffered when he was tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted." Jesus is a king whose first act was not to display power, but to identify with us. He stepped into our world to be close, to be our friend in trials, to be the one who knows our need. He isn't a stranger to our weakness. Jesus not only sees your hidden moments, he not only sees the moments that no one else sees, the moments, your pain, your wounds that you keep buried, your temptations, your shame. He not only sees them, but he understands them. He's not a stranger to weakness. He is familiar with the most fragile parts of your story, and he does not turn away from it. He became fully human. And sometimes we miss this. He became fully human and didn't skip out on any of the vulnerability that comes with it. He wore his weakness openly. But this is not the king that we naturally want. We want a king who is impressive, someone that makes us feel good to bend down to, someone who is untouchable, commanding, someone worthy of our respect, a king we can bow down to without it challenging our pride. But Jesus refuses to be that kind of king. When we strip him of weakness and humanity, we create the king we prefer, but not the one that we need. The real Jesus is fully divine and fully human. He is all-powerful, yet he chose weakness. He conquered death, yet he bled and died. He is the King of Kings, yet he arrived as a tiny, helpless, dependent baby. We forget sometimes that Jesus, from the very beginning, had to rely on others. He was a baby. He didn't come in power. He didn't come having it all together. In the most honest and true way that you are dependable and in need of help, that is how he came. And when we strip him of his weakness and humanity, we don't get the king that we need. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Bowing down to a baby might expose something in us. If this fragile and unimpressive dependent child is our king, then what does that mean about us? It means that we are not self-sufficient or as strong, not as impressive as we want to believe. It confronts our pride and our illusion of control. So how should we respond? Well, O Holy Night asks us to behold this king. Not the king that we want him to be, but this king in a manger, a small baby, helpless. This is your king. Before him, lowly bend. This Jesus who identifies with the weakest parts of our experience, before him, lowly bend. Not because he appears powerful, but because in his weakness he reveals the heart of God. His humility is his glory, his vulnerability is his victory, and his lowliness is what makes him worthy. And so the question becomes, what happens in you when you bow before a king who comes in weakness rather than in strength? What is that challenge in your heart about what you think about yourself or what you think about the thing that you believe when you have to bow down to a baby? What part of your pride, your self-image, your desire to appear put together has to bend with you? Upon learning that she was pregnant, Mary responds with a song called the Magnificat. And she says in Luke chapter 1, "My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior, for he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on, generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name." His mercy extends to those who fear him from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down the rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, just as he promised our ancestors. The proud are brought down and the humble are lifted up. And this is what it looks like when Jesus is king. Mary knew it from the moment that she was told that she was going to have this baby, that this kingdom was going to look different, that when he was arrived, he was going to flip everything upside down. Verse 3 of O Holy Night is probably the most controversial verse of the song because of its role in the abolitionist movement. It is not focused on the night of Jesus' birth anymore. This part of the song turns to look towards the future. It's talking about the reality of Jesus' rule as king. And it asks the question, what would a kingdom look like if it followed the teachings of Jesus, if it lived like Jesus, if it followed him as king, if his law is love and his gospel is peace? And if that is true, then he will put an end to slavery and any form viewing others as less than a brother or fellow image bearer. His name will put an end to all oppression. His name alone will put an end to oppression. A line from the original French verse that doesn't necessarily get carried over super well here, that really stuck out to me, is the Redeemer has broken every bond. The earth is free and heaven is open. There are not very many songs, I think, that paint a clearer vision or a bolder vision of Jesus' kingdom than this one. It's bold what it says, but it's saying if this is true, then it's going to have real life, reality-shifting consequences. Look at Hebrews 2 again, just a few verses before where we looked last time. In verse 14, it says, "Since the children have flesh and blood, he, Jesus, too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death." Jesus has freed us from our slavery to sin and death. And that freedom is real and profound and available to all of us. And I want everyone to know that and take that away from today. That is an important, the foundation of our faith. He has freed us from our sin and he has freed us from death. I don't want to minimize that at all. But what is striking is that John Dwight, when he translated this song and talked about this part of it, he believed this line not only spoke to a spiritual reality, but to a physical one. In his day, slavery was still a brutal and present reality, an injustice that he saw every day. And yet Dwight believed that Christ's life, death, and resurrection had something to say about that too. That yes, it freed from slavery and death, and that's not to be minimized. But this slavery that he was seeing, this injustice that he was seeing around him, that Christ's life, death, and resurrection had something to say about that too. And so he translated the song in a way that boldly proclaimed that Jesus would break real chains, and that Christians were called to see enslaved people as their brothers and sisters. Dwight wrote those words in a world where slavery had not yet been dismantled. He was looking to a future, that chains shall he break, and in his name all oppression will cease. He was looking to a future. He lived in a reality that did not match the hope that he proclaimed. And still, he spoke a kingdom truth into a broken world. He believed that even if God's kingdom had not yet come in fullness, it was advancing and unstoppable, and it was the thing that was now inevitable, not the endless night. His translation, it wasn't just a commentary, it was a proclamation. It declared that what would one day be true, even if the present reality resisted it. And maybe this is part of what it means to follow Jesus, to live today as if he truly is king. He is your king. to let the future reality of God's kingdom reshape the present one, to look at the world as it is and boldly live as if it is becoming what God has promised. And so the question becomes for us, how is God's future reshaping your present? What present realities, what inevitable things that you believe are just a part of life would lose their power because a greater reality is coming? It's on the way. In a world marked by so many hardships, in a world full of domestic abuse and school shootings and generational poverty and loneliness and mental health issues and struggles, do we really believe that these chains can be broken? That minds can be renewed, lives restored, and that oppression, just by the name of Jesus, can be brought to an end? I mean, what could truly unfold if we lived like that hope was real? Like we believed Jesus' kingdom was breaking in all around us. Dwight wrote those words and loved the song and started singing it, but in his life, he watched slavery fall in his lifetime. This future that he wrote and proclaimed, that he believed that Jesus' death and resurrection in his life would have something to do about, he actually saw that come to pass in his life. And was it clean? No. Was it an easy thing? No. Were people hurt along the way? No. Yeah, but he saw it come to pass. What could unfold if we truly lived like that hope was real? If we lived with our eyes fixed on the kingdom? The song ends with one final response to that reality shift, and that's praise. Christ is the Lord. Oh, praise his name forever. It's not praise because everything's fixed, right? Dwight didn't write it because he saw the world as he wanted it to be, but because he wanted to see that world come. It's not praise because the world is right, but praise because a new kingdom has begun. A king has come, and the night is already giving way to dawn. I'm going to have the band come back up. We're going to be singing this song after we finish the sermon here. We're going to sing it together. And as we sing this song that's traveled from a French poem to abolitionist gatherings to bars and street corners to be the first radio broadcast in history, as we sing this, let your praise be an act of defiance, of revolution, that a kingdom is coming, a new government is stepping into your life, that a declaration that the night is ending and that the kingdom is coming, and that the king who once lay in a manger now rules with love and peace and justice. This holy night, this one we're going to be talking about all month, it's the moment when the tide turned. And how should we respond? We fall on our knees, bow before the king who comes in weakness. Lift your voice in praise and live like his kingdom is breaking in all around you, because it is. Just have eyes to see it. Christ is the Lord. Praise his name forever. Let's pray. Dear God, thank you for this song, its unlikely beginnings, and the fact that we're still singing it today. God, thank you for the truth that is built on, that is found in your word. I pray that as we sing this song, that we can allow there to be a revolution in our own life, God. That we can lay down those parts of ourselves that we cling to, that we try to hide away from you, or that we want to hold on to tightly, God, that we can lay those down at your feet and allow you to rule in our lives. I pray that we can see you in your weakness and be humbled by it, God. I pray that as we sing this song, God, that you can move in our hearts. We love you. And in Jesus' name, amen.